Good morning, everybody. It's good to see you. Well, this is the last lecture on Genjokoan, and I looked today and saw that I've been talking about Genjokoan since January of this year. Okay, so we're on the last part of the Dogen's Genjokoan, actualizing the fundamental point, and it's the koan at the end. Zen Master Baoche was fanning himself. A monk approached and said, "Master, the nature of wind is permanent, and there is no place it does not reach. Why then do you fan yourself?" Master Baoche replied, "What is the meaning of its reaching everywhere?" Master Baoche replied, "Although you understand that the nature of wind is permanent, you do not understand the meaning of its reaching everywhere." And the monk responded, "What is the meaning of its reaching everywhere?" Master Baoche just kept fanning himself, and the monk bowed deeply. So, what's going on here? A monk approaches the teacher who's fanning himself. He approaches the teacher and he asks a question. I think it's important to notice that Master Baoche, in the context of this koan, is already fanning himself when he's asked this question. So, the essential question essentially what the monk is asking, he says, if Buddha nature is everywhere, why do we need to make effort and practice? So, to be honest with you, I'm not sure that this is a question that one of us might ask. For myself, I figure I need to practice because I equate practice with skillful response. And there's always need for improvement in that department, so I figure that's my practice. So the monk's question indicates that he doesn't know how practice is functioning in his daily life. And I think his question sounds abstract, but actually the question itself is very personal. So we might have this confusion. We don't see the connection between maybe the doctrine and what we're being asked to do, or just what we're being asked to do in practice. For example, Zazen, and our daily life. We may not see that connection between the two. So in the case of Zazen, there's a lot of faith in that activity. We're just being asked to do this activity. And on some level, we receive very little instruction in the course of Shikantaza, how we do that, practice. You know, Kodo Sawaki Roshi said, and he's Shohaku Okamura's Dharma grandfather, he said, Zazen is good for nothing. That's kind of a radical statement. Zazen is good for nothing. So why did he say this? Because our practice is based on doing it for its own sake. Maybe not knowing the reason why. We don't do it because we think we're going to gain something. So, of course, when we come to practice, we do think we're going to gain something. And often we do Zazen with that in mind. We do the practices with that in mind. And of course, the irony of this is that actually we do gain something. But, it isn't what we think it will be. That's why Sawaki Kodo said, Zazen is good for nothing. Because he wants us to let go of these ideas we have about what Zazen is good for. And also because the transformation of Zazen in practice takes time. So if you engage in Zazen, you will transform your body and mind. If you engage in practice, your body and mind will be transformed over time. But essentially in Soto Zen, Jaco and I don't do anything. Our practice is not different than your practice. We don't receive some kind of special instruction about how to do zazen, for example, when we receive Dharma transmission from our teacher. There are some schools of Buddhism where it is a kind of steps and stages practice, where people are doing different things based on how long or how much they've progressed along this continuum of practices. But in Soto Zen, we're doing the same thing, and we do it for the rest of our lives. So that's the meaning of Zazen is good for nothing. So if you engage in formal practice, sitting, ceremony, and work practice, you will be transformed. But it won't be sudden, and it may not be immediately apparent to you what has happened, nor might it be something that you expect. So the monk asks his question, and Master Baoche responds, "You have an intellectual understanding of Buddha nature. So you know the teaching about Buddha nature as abiding fundamental reality." So I'm paraphrasing here. You have an intellectual understanding of Buddha nature, so you know the teaching about Buddha nature is abiding fundamental reality. But what you don't understand, it is right here with you. It is you. So what Baoche said was, although you understand that the nature of the wind is permanent, you do not understand the meaning of its reaching everywhere. And my paraphrase is, you have an intellectual understanding of Buddha nature, so you know the teaching about Buddha nature as abiding fundamental reality, but what you don't understand is that it is right here with you. It is you. So to say permanent means that we understand from the doctrinal discussions of this, we understand that Buddha nature isn't going anywhere. Buddha nature is fundamental reality. But then when we say it reaches everywhere, it means that this Buddha nature is the very air we breathe. It is the ground upon which we walk. It is delusion, it is realization, it is samsara and nirvana. And I think we don't like that so much. We like the idea of it's the air that we breathe, it's where we walk. But it's hard for us when we think about it in the context of it includes both samsara and nirvana. Both of those things are simultaneously present. So I think a better question is something like, how does Buddha nature function? So Buddha nature, its characteristics are that it's impermanent, it's interbeing, it's causal or codependent arising. So how is this functioning? What is the function here? So I would say that this manifests as empathy. This interbeing aspect is empathy. That we know that we share these basic qualities of all being, but even on a more emotional level, especially as human beings. We know that we feel this empathy. We have so much more alike than we are different. And then there's the aspect of understanding that our actions have consequences that can be helpful or harmful. This is the codependent arising connected part. Our actions make a difference. And we see playing this out, that, how we are with the environment as individuals, as cultures. Everything's connected. All of our actions make a ripple. All of our actions have consequences. And finally, everything is a process, and that's impermanence. Everything is constantly changing and interacting. On that kind of basic level. So, from this way that we can embody these aspects, the way that we embody Buddha nature as it is, from this our practice arises, from this our practice comes forth, our compassion, our skillful means. So this is what we call the Bodhisattva Buddha path. And that's what happens when we really understand the nature of what Baoche is calling the wind, the nature of the wind's power, the nature of the wind presencing, the production of the wind. So then the monk asks for an explanation, and Master Baoche demonstrates the meaning of his teaching by just continuing to fan. So remember, at the very beginning, he's already fanning when the monk comes up to ask him the question. So Master Baoche, this is his practice. He is continuously practicing before the question, after the question. So Master Baoche is not going to explain the meaning of this to the student, because to explain the meaning is not going to be helpful to him. To give him an intellectual answer to his question, well, essentially as I am doing for you right now, would not be helpful. So he says, I'm not going to answer that question. It's going to miss the mark. This monk's head is already completely full. So the master just keeps fanning. So what do we see by this? How do we understand this? We see that although the wind is permanent, we need to act to actualize the Bodhisattva way, the Buddha path. So that's the basic meaning here of this koan, of the story, is that we have to actually do the practice. So how do we manifest this always present Buddha nature, which Master Baoche is calling the wind? So the wind, our Buddha nature, isn't disconnected from causal conditions. It isn't divorced from your daily life and your daily life's activities. So I was curious about the nature of wind, not just as a metaphor, but wind itself. So the scientific definition of wind, what causes wind is air flowing from high pressure to low. And the direction of the wind is caused by the Earth's rotation and various other factors. So I thought this was actually kind of interesting in relationship to our koan. So wind is the result of pre-existing conditions, and here those pre-existing conditions are Buddha nature. But for wind to manifest, there must be the codependent relationship between the high and the low pressure. And that's our activity, that's our practice, as our daily life practice. So when these elements are present, the activity and Buddha nature of course is always present, and actually so is activity, practice arises, skillful response results, and it manifests itself. So this wind and the fanning are simultaneously functioning together. I think Dogen would say wind and fanning study together. So this activity of fanning is our effort. So we have to have the basis, Buddha nature, this codependent elements, the high, low pressures, and other elements such as the Earth's rotation, and the interaction, which is our practice, which manifests as wind, our realization. So this is our practice effort. We, with all beings, are Buddha nature. But to just know that I don't think that's enough. To just know that, it's very helpful for us to know that. It's very good for us to start there. But we have to actually act from there. There has to be a desire to explore and dance with all of our life's partners. So this is our particular life, our particular Dharma position, our particular essence as Buddha's way. So from the perspective of practice, there must be effort. We must make effort. And this is what manifests. realization. We have to integrate the music, dance steps. We have to respond to our partners, and we have to interbe with everyone on the dance floor. Thus, we must fan and bring forth our and all beings' Buddha nature through our Bodhisattva practice, through our Buddha mind. And this is what Genjokoan is. This is actualizing the fundamental point. So this whole confluence of factors needs to be present, and it is present. And in this case, it all funnels down to you and me, and to our activity as individuals in concert with all of reality's presencing, which is very particular for each one of us. Are you fanning or not? So at the end, the monk bows to the teacher. Do you think he understands? We don't know if the monk understands. We're not there. We don't know what happens here. But here's something we do know. We do know that the monk has been a Zen student for a very long time, because he knows that he should bow. Whether he knows or not what the answer to that question is that he had, or what Master Baoche was trying to say, he knows that he should bow, and so he does. He bows. This is very important. This is a very important thing. These things that we do in practice because we are told that it's practice. I remember I went and spent a month when I first started practicing. I went to Hokkyoji to study with Category Roshi. And at that time, whenever I didn't do something correctly or someone told me I had made a mistake, I would always have a reason why I did it or didn't do it. And finally someone said, just bow. Just bow, just say thank you, just bow. And so finally, well actually I didn't learn it there, that was the first time I was told it. This is very tenacious. I learned this at Tassajara. I finally figured out all you have to do is bow and say thank you. So this means that this monk has been around for a while. He bows and he says, thank you. So this is important. Sometimes we do things because we're told that this is the practice. We fake it until we can make it into this practice. These activities imprint us, and over time they transform us. And this is what Zazen is. Ceremony is, work is, understanding transforms you over time. You may not notice it, but it is happening. So practice effort involves faith in the system, in the teacher, and in our comrades in practice. This is taking refuge in Dharma, Buddha, Sangha, and all have to come together and make Yoji our continuous practice. So there's one more part that ends the Genjokoan. One more paragraph here. Dogen wrote at the end, the actualization of the Buddha Dharma, the vital path of its authentic transmission is like this. If you say that you do not need to fan yourself because the nature of wind is permanent, and you can have wind without fanning, you will understand neither permanence nor the nature of the wind. The nature of wind is permanent. Because of that, the wind of the Buddha's house brings forth the gold of the earth and makes the cream of the long river ripen. So this activity of fanning is what Dogen is saying is the actualization of the Buddha Dharma. This fanning, this shared practice we do, is how we get to realization and how the Dharma is transmitted. And I'm sure that what Dogen is saying here, when he says transmission, he means when we are verified by our teacher. When we sit next to our teacher and both of us are fanning together. This is how Zen is transmitted. We say warm hand to warm hand. We don't understand the practice by reading a book, although reading books is helpful, but we don't understand this in our bodies by reading books. We have to show up in person and make effort. When Dogen says the vital path, he means that this practice is alive, it's fresh, it's full of energy, it's absolutely important. Why is this so? Because it's moment after moment. Each moment is different. Each moment is a new opportunity. Each moment has its own intrinsic value. It's energy. And that's why we say we make our effort and practice this moment and this moment and this moment. Ujjhama Roshi said that breathing is like this. The air we breathe is already present. It is Buddha nature. But we must use our lungs. We must make effort to inhale the oxygen. And this is our practice. Otherwise, we die. Just like the fact that we never stop breathing, we also never stop practicing. So Dogen ends the Fasca with, the wind of the Buddha's house brings forth the gold of the earth and makes the cream of the long river ripen. So there are a lot of possible sources for this phrase, which actually I'm not going to go into. Nobody actually really knows where the phrase comes from, but it's interesting to know. So the wind of the Buddha's house brings forth the gold of the earth and makes the cream of the long river ripen. The Japanese character for wind is fu. So that's the character that's used in the wind of the Buddha's house. And wind can refer to wind, but it can also refer to customs, styles, or behavior. So another translation of this line is, the family customs of the myriad dharmas brings forth the gold of the earth, etc. The family customs of the myriad dharmas. This family style, or custom, are also the ways of both teachings, which is the dharma, and all things, which are dharmas. Both are pointing to reality's functioning. And in Japan, we talk about the family style of a lineage, the family style of a temple, the family style of a school of Zen. So this is our family custom. This is our family style. How we talk about, how we enact interbeing codependence and practicing one thing together. All beings, all dharmas, this family house, he says, the wind of the Buddha's house, this family house, our world, is the wind created by the interaction between what is Buddha nature and the radiant light of its manifestation, the wind. This is the radiant light of the 24 hours of your day, as Dogen says in Uji, being time. What neighborhood is his family located in? What neighborhood is the Buddha house? It's your neighborhood. It's your life. It's this moment together. So finally at the end he says, fully actualizing in practice realization becomes the gold of the earth and makes the cream of the long river ripen. So here there's this notion of ripening in practice. So I would suggest that this golden earth and river of cream is nirvana. It is the Buddha's field of the one who fans. We see through the activity of fanning, we see through our practice how amazing our world is, how amazing this life is. We can really appreciate this world as gold and cream. So we may understand our experiences, our given experience as great, as nirvana, our not so great, delusion. But both of these are together, both of these are included in Buddha's house. And then there's something beyond both of those. And I would say that this is what Dogen is saying is the vital path of when we are the self forgetting the self, becoming fully integrated actualizing the fundamental point, totally integrated with our life. So achieving this state, achieving this understanding, moment to moment, requires that we sit down and fan. We don't run around from one thing to another. When you find a teacher and a set of practices that resonate for you, you should stick to that. Sticking to one thing means that when it gets hard, you have the tools to really investigate your situation. You need to really move into the Buddha's house. Take all your stuff, move into the Buddha's house. Take all your messes, take all your problems, take all your happiness, take your satori, all of those things, and move into the Buddha's house. There's a room for you. You have to find the style and the practices that work for you. And once that happens, stay. If you don't do this, you will be flitting from one Zen center to another, never settling down. Please find your place. As Dogen says, when you find your place where you are, practice occurs, actualizing the fundamental point. So please keep fanning and bring forth the wind of the Buddha's house. Thank you.